The Uncharted Territories is a podcast about seeing the unseen in the world of matter. Join me, Shara Prophet, the Mind Magic Coach, and my partner, astrologer Scott Tejerian, as we take an esoteric look this season into the life, death, and afterlife of a variety of celebrities and public figures who lost their lives prematurely or unexpectedly.
Hi, Shara.
Hey, Scott.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well. So great to be here with you.
Yay.
I'm very excited to talk about our next
case.
Ooh. Yes. And it's a very interesting individual. Somebody that I admire very much for multiple reasons. I mean, number one, because she was incredibly talented. Incredibly talented. If you don't know who Dorothy Dandridge is, do a Google search, look up some of these old videos, watch her dance, watch her sing. She was also the first woman of color to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress.
Yes.
Truly an incredible human being, amazingly talented, but a life that ended quite prematurely.
Yeah.
Yes,
absolutely. So there's going to be some very interesting things that come up from the reading that I did with her.
I'm excited to hear.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome. I'm excited to hear how things line up in her astrological chart as we're going forward. So
yes. Well, let's get into it, Shara. Tell me about Dorothy. What was it like to step into her presence? How did you greet her? How did you invite her in? Tell me about this.
Yes. So with Dorothy, I basically just sat and just got a sense of her energy and called her forth and asked if she would be willing to come through and chat. And she did. She came in. Her energy was quite nervous, but also very strong. Very regal, but just kind of a nervous type of energy that she had. And it was really interesting.
What was she wearing?
She was wearing a red and white polka dot 50 style one piece with a black cardigan. It was a red outfit. The dots were white. Then she had on a black cardigan with black shoes, black flats with like pointed toes. And she was smoking a cigarette.
Yes.
It's really interesting because I had just finished my reading with Whitney Houston. And when Dorothy came in, Whitney was still there.
Ooh, yeah.
And they greeted each other. They greeted each other. And Dorothy's words to Whitney was legends acknowledge each other.
Yes.
So it was very much like, hello, how are you?
Respect.
Respect. Absolute respect. Yeah.
Yes, they're both pioneers.
Yes,
both
they are.
Pioneers.
Yep, they are. So it was really cool to have both of those powerful forces in the same space.
Wow.
And when we started talking, I always like to find out what the running theme is for each person's life while they were here in the physical realm. And what she said that treachery was the running theme in her life for Dorothy.
Treachery.
That's heavy. I know, that's pretty heavy.
Yes.
Well, it was pretty heavy. It makes sense.
It totally makes sense.
She was dealing with a lot here.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
This realm was pretty dense for her soul.
Yes.
And she said that she was so busy running away from herself her entire life. And that there's nothing more treacherous than that. And I agree 100% because you can't get away from yourself. Nope. That's one place you can't escape from.
Absolutely.
She said that she didn't like who she was. She was light-skinned and too light to be black, but too tanned to be white. So she never felt like she fit anywhere, you know?
Yes.
And that she wasn't accepted in her own family. So, yeah, that's a lot to deal with.
Yes.
And her mom, she said she didn't get the feeling that her mother liked her very much. I'm pretty sure her mother loved her, but there was a lot of tension in their relationship. And, you know, she said that her mother was a desperate woman who never was satisfied and she was always looking for more. So I get the feeling that her mom kind of had these grandiose ideas of what her life should have been like.
Totally.
Her mother was also an entertainer.
Yeah, she is one of the first stage moms I met, you know, where her life maybe didn't turn out the way that she had envisioned or hoped. And so she lived vicariously through her daughters, Vivian and Dorothy.
Yeah.
And especially Dorothy. And I think she rode them very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. It's interesting because that seems to be quite the theme with all of the energies, all of our cases, you know, that the parents are like, "Urgh."
Yes. It was the same with the Kennedys, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. And Dorothy was a child performer. She was like performing at the Cotton Club when she was like 10 years old or something. So
yeah. And because her mom also was an entertainer and didn't really make it to the heights that Dorothy made it, I think that there was a little bit of resentment there while still pushing her to be the best. But then there was like this narcissistic type of interaction that she was having with Dorothy.
Yes.
Putting her down while trying to build her up and push her.
Yeah.
You know, and that can really wear on a person's confidence and the way they see themselves and their self-esteem. And it's just a really twisted way.
Totally.
To try to push your kids to do something.
Absolutely.
And so when she's talking about her mom, it almost feels as though she knew that she was there to talk about that. And that's what brought her energy in kind of nervous.
She knew that she was going to have to talk about her mom. She
was going to have to talk
but
about
didn't
that.
really want to talk about her mom.
Yeah.
Because it's still a sore spot, even though she's passed over.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, it's important for people to understand because we've been taught in Western religion that, well, once you pass over, you have no more worries and no more fears and everything is all good. And the thing that people need to realize is that all is mind. All is mind.
Yes.
So however your mind was when you leave this planet, that's how it's going to be on the other side. But it can still be healed because those are behaviors and those are emotions and those are unfixed traits.
Yes.
So even on the other side, you can totally heal that.
But it's not like it all goes away.
It doesn't all go away.
It's a golden brick road and rainbows after, you know, when you go to heaven.
Yeah.
No.
No. Because, I mean, and if you do believe in hell, that is the definition, is the state of mind that you leave.
You can be in heaven or hell on earth.
Absolutely.
So when you leave earth, yes, you can be in heaven or hell. But if you're in hell on earth, you'll be in hell after earth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where are you right now, Scott? Are you in heaven or hell?
Heaven. I'm with you, Shara, right now. Right. Are you kidding me?
We have wings.
I'm loving this right now.
We have angel wings.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. So the very strained relationship with mom, for sure. Dorothy said that her mom really didn't care how that affected her children. She was always searching for something better. And she said that she never felt like she was enough. And that's the reason that she stayed running away from herself all of those years. And she said, hell, I still am.
Still running from herself.
Still running away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
She also said that she never felt like she was a leader in her life. Like she was always looking for direction from other people. She said, I never fully took control of my life. I was a nervous wreck most of the time, which explains a lot as she came in. And she didn't know her father very well. Her mother kept her and her sister away from the father. And the reason for that was because she said, my mother didn't want to feel trapped by having her and her sister fall in love with their father. And then the mother would have to be there with him more, would have to stay with him, and didn't have her freedom to move around and do what she wanted to do.
Yes, control.
Control. And then also, I don't think mom was really playing on that team.
That's the thing. She had the person who managed Dorothy and her sister's act was a woman named Geneva Williams, who was Dorothy's mother. Ruby was her lover. So, yeah, she wasn't on that team. She was on the other team. Makes it
a little difficult when dad is in the picture, right?
Right, exactly. And the dad was a Baptist minister. So how odd is that? You're a lesbian, but your children's father is a Baptist minister. There's going to be some conflict there, I imagine.
Yeah.
He's not going to be cool with, I'm just assuming, but
I'm pretty sure that played a bigger role in her not having the father around and not as present, because she didn't want to deal. I mean, well, back then,
we're talking about the 1930s here.
Yeah.
The 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
This is like 90 some years ago, 80 some years ago.
Yeah.
So things were
very different.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, things are just now.
Exactly.
Turning around.
Exactly.
So
how do you think they were 80 years ago?
Yeah, no one had space for that.
No.
Especially a preacher.
Yes.
He wouldn't have space for that. And the whole town probably would have found out, and it just would have been a mess for her. So I think a lot of her keeping them away was so that she could live her life and protect herself. But in turn, she ended up damaging her children.
Yes.
Because she wasn't okay with living her life in the sun.
Absolutely.
But could she? Probably not. No,
exactly.
You know, so that's got to be a tough thing.
Totally. Yeah. No blame or judgment to anyone here.
That's right.
I mean, life is hard. It's a struggle, doing the best you can. It's just an honor to be able to look at this and from the outside and see like, okay, so this is why things were the way they were.
Yeah. And I mean, I could imagine that would make her pretty angry and pretty unpleasant to be around because of what she was dealing with on the inside. And it's important to think about our parents as human beings, as people who have demons and people who have fears, and they're just doing the best that they can from their ability, from their capacity.
Exactly.
And kind of looking at it that way helps us to maybe have some compassion.
Yes. Your parents are going to break your heart.
Oh, yeah.
That's a part of the contract.
Yeah.
You know, to fall in love and to get your heart broken. That's part of the contract. And I see it every time I look at somebody's astrological code, and I tell all my clients, you can forgive them for this because they're literally just sent by the universe, cast as a supporting character in the divine story of your life.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I also like to tell clients as well, you know, picture your parents as little children.
Yes.
Imagine what they went through.
Yes. Oh my God.
If you can just picture them as little children.
Yes.
It can really help you to start to release some of the resentment and the anger towards them. We've all had to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Great advice.
So, getting back to her father and why mom didn't want him around, she said that her father made her mom feel like her world was small and she wanted larger than life. She always embellished the truth to make her life seem bigger than what it actually was. And when I asked Dorothy how did her parents affect her relationships with men, because clearly it did.
That's your first relationship.
Clearly it did.
Your first relationship is with your parents.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They're gonna set the tone.
And looking at her life and her relationships, it was quite interesting. So she said that it made her relationships feel like a dry desert. And with men, it was really hard for her to trust her own feelings. She didn't know if she was really in love or if it was because she was supposed to love them. She just didn't know how to. She didn't have that representation.
Yes.
She saw her mother constantly pushing her father away, and father wasn't there to teach her something else. She wasn't even allowed to have an experience with him on her own, so she had no idea. And since we operate from our learned behavior, if there's nothing to learn, you know, what do you do?
Yes.
And so she said, I didn't know how to love. I've never seen a man love a woman or vice versa. Yeah. And she also said that the character Carmen reminded her of her mom. Distant, desirable, broken.
And Carmen was the character that she played.
Yes.
That got her the nomination for Best Actress for the Academy Award. Yes.
Yep, exactly. And that she seemed secure, or she had that facade of security going on, but operating from insecurity. And she was controlling because she actually didn't have any control. So That's probably why she was able to tap into that character so profoundly, because she had that representation.
Well, yes. And I mean, I can reflect all of this from like an astrological perspective as well. Going back to when you were talking about treachery, Dorothy was born November 9th, 1922. The sun was in Scorpio, and Scorpio is the deepest, darkest sign, the most passionate sign. It's the sign that represents secrets, paranoia, manipulation. These are all elements of treachery. And it also represents control and a powerful will. So when you're born a Scorpio, you know, the scorpion's the smallest of all the symbols of the signs of the zodiac, and you can squash it with your heel. So Scorpios tend to have a very challenging periods throughout their life where their spirit is killed, it's squashed, and they have to regenerate, be reborn. And so that's the treachery element. You know, we've talked a lot about the mom, and the moon represents the mother. Dorothy's sun was in alignment with the moon, which indicates a very strong connection to the mother in terms of her personal identity, identifying through the mother. But the moon was also in a very stressful alignment with Dorothy's midheaven, which represents the career. The midheaven is the highest point in the sky when you were born. So that represents your achievement, what you want to achieve in the world. And so having the moon in stressful alignment with the midheaven shows that the mother was pushing in a very uncomfortable way for her to achieve. Now, the father is Saturn, and Dorothy's Saturn is in direct opposition to her Chiron, and Chiron is the wound that you feel like you can't recover from. So she had a wound in relation to the father. She had a wound in relation to being an authority, believing that she could be an authority, or having a difficult relationship with authority. Her Chiron was in Aries. Aries is symbolized by the ram, the supremely confident creature of the zodiac. She had a wound to her self-confidence. And so that's leadership. She didn't know how to lead, you were saying. So this is due to Chiron in Aries. It's difficult for her to do that. And there's a restraint for her to lead because of the connection to Saturn, which represents restriction as well as the father. Now, her relationship to men and relationships in general, Venus was in stressful alignment with Uranus. Venus represents relationships. Uranus represents uniqueness. So it means that there is something very unique, something very different about her perception of relationships. How she related to other people was very unique. And then Venus was also in alignment with Mars. So I look at this as a reason why she was so coordinated as a dancer. When you have Venus and Mars in alignment with each other, that's the masculine and feminine energies that are working together. But at the same time, Mars is in direct opposition to her ascendant, which is her face, her body, her personality, which could create a lot of agitation, a lot of aggression on her part, but it also gave her a lot of courage. And Mars was in the 7th house, which is the house of marriage, which means that she experienced conflict in relationship.
Wow. Okay. Well, looks like we are definitely on the same wavelength, which is great. That's good.
Every time you say something, I'm like, wow, okay, wait, I see this here. I see this there. So,
and can you tell everybody what you're looking at? Because guys, he's not reading from like a script or anything. He just has this chart that he's drawn out that looks like weird symbols and a whole nother language. And he's just sitting here like translating it.
Thank you for describing that, Shara. Yes. I mean, astrology is a language that communicates how the planets and stars influence life on Earth. And so every time I meet with a client and draw any chart, I draw it out by hand. So I drew out Dorothy Dandridge's astrological code. And yes, if you don't understand how to read the language. It just looks like gibberish on a page. But to me, it makes perfect sense because I read this fluently. So it's like, think of like a bicycle wheel, so to speak, where there's 12 different spokes. And in those spokes are all these different symbols, which are the planets. And then there's a bunch of other symbols on the outside, which represent the location of the planets on the day that Dorothy died, September 8th, 1965. So I'm looking at the planets on November 9th, 1922, and the planets on September 8th, 1965, all at the same time.
Wow. Okay. Yes, that's amazing. It's really an art form.
Thank you, Shara. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, it makes perfect sense because that's exactly the energy that I was picking up on from her. And just to let everybody know, like, I try not to do a ton of research. I like to just go in nice and clean and trust what comes in. And that's what makes this so interesting.
Exactly, because I do the opposite. You know, I'll look at the astrological code and it will mean something to me, but then when I look at that person's biography, that's when it really comes alive. It makes sense. It's like, oh my God, yes, that's why this is there and that's there and the sun's this, and so yes.
So this is a nice little dance that we get to do.
Totally.
So it's fun. It's exciting. I love it. All right. So in her relationships, she said that she pretended to be in love to the point that she started believing it and allowed things to go on in her relationships that probably weren't the very best for her, probably wasn't healthy, but because she just felt like,
this is what I'm supposed to do.
This is what I'm supposed to do, right? This
is
what love is about, right?
Yeah.
This is what marriage is about, right?
Yep.
And so she talks about her first husband, and she said that she would allow certain things to go on in that relationship because she felt like love meant that you're supposed to accept a person regardless of their faults, regardless of their infidelities, regardless of whatever it is that they did. And she said that it was a very caring connection, that he made her feel happy. And actually, she said, I actually healed a lot of my insecurities about being Black in that relationship. Now, she's describing her first husband as a Canadian man, a Caucasian man. I don't know why Canadian keeps coming up. And she said that he made her feel like a queen, but he ended up cheating and leaving her for someone else.
So that's interesting because I see 3 significant relationships in Dorothy's life, romantic relationships. The first one was with another dancer and entertainer named Harold Nichols, who was African American. And they had a child together. While in labor, her husband left her stranded at her sister-in-law's home without a car, and he went to play golf. And she started to have contractions. She refused to go to the hospital without him. And then by the time she finally got to the hospital, they had to use forceps, which apparently may have caused some brain damage in the child. So it was a very traumatic experience. She did have a significant relationship with a white man. His name was Otto Preminger. And that lasted 4 years. He was a film director, and he directed Carmen Jones. Which was the film that she was nominated for Best Actress. But Preminger, while they were together for 4 years, was also married. So they were never married. And I think that she had always hoped that he would leave his wife for her. Then he never did. So she finally got the message, I guess, and moved on. And then she ended up marrying Jack Dennison. Jack Dennison was a white man who was a Las Vegas restaurant owner. This was also a toxic relationship for Dorothy. He got into a lot of financial trouble. There was allegations of domestic violence. He stole money from her. Yeah, it was not good, this relationship.
So the only one that she's showing me, because the first husband, the first actual husband, father of her child, didn't even show up.
Exactly.
Did not show up. The only one that showed up was the guy who was helping her with her career.
Yes, and that's Otto Preminger. He was the director of the film that she was nominated for an Oscar for. But on top of that, he also helped her in her career, but at the same time, I don't think that he helped her as much as she had hoped he would help her. And I think that she wanted to be with him.
She did. Well, she thought in her mind,
they were together.
In her mind, that was her husband. And so she's referring to him. And even right now, she's like, that's my husband. That's my husband. He was my husband and he left me.
Yes. Yes. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It may sound funny, but it actually makes sense. Because that's how complicated relationships are. You know, a man can be married, but not with his wife and spending all his time with another woman. And that woman, in her heart and soul, is like, I am the partner. Yes. So I can totally see why Otto Preminger would be, that's the man right there for her. He's somebody who is helping her with her career. Yes, he was married to another woman, but his focused attention was on Dorothy. Yes. But it ended at one point.
It did. Yeah. Yes. Eventually, she was worn out and tired of not receiving or not being treated the way she felt like she should have been treated. So she stood up for herself. So just to let the listeners know, sometimes when we're working with these energies, with these spirits from the other side, and if they tend to get a little upset or tired, sometimes they will interrupt the technology. So we were in the middle of our conversation about Dorothy and Otto Preminger, and she was getting a little frustrated because we were discussing the fact that he was married to someone else, and then everything shut down. So just wanting to give you guys a little bit of information there.
Yeah, they're here. Dorothy's here.
She's here.
Yes.
She's here. I have to go get her a pack of cigarettes when I leave here today. So she's like, I need a cigarette.
Yes.
But I did not bring cigarettes today. So that is something to think about. Maybe I should just start bringing some offerings for them.
Yeah, some offerings.
Yeah, I'll do that for sure.
Absolutely. She's like, you're going to be talking about me then.
Yeah.
I want some of my treats.
Yes. So that's fine. I will absolutely do that for her. Thank you, Dorothy. We heard you loud and clear. But she did say that she felt very cared for. He made her feel cared for. And I think he was kind of acting almost as a father figure. Yes. Honestly. And because that's something that she didn't have, you know. Yes. And that was like the closest thing to a father figure. Also a lover. And he did help her get her on the map for being the first African-American woman.
Well, he suggested that she only accept leading roles.
And can you imagine coming from a place where you never felt like you belonged?
Right.
And then for someone to see you. And back then, for a white man to be acknowledging a black woman who has come from that societal programming that you're not enough, you're inferior, you're the lesser race or species, and not even that, really. Yes. And to be seen and to be recognized that way, of course, she's going to have this feeling of, you're mine.
Yes.
You know?
Well, he was that father figure, too, because he was 17 years older than her.
Yeah. No, that explains a lot.
And he was Austrian. So, you know, a different sort of view of the world than the American white man.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
So I don't know why Canadian kept coming up for me, but he was a foreigner.
Yes, so. He was a foreigner. Exactly. We got that.
Absolutely. Okay. So when I started talking to her about her drug problem, the issues with drugs, I asked her about that, and she said, well, they all said that I had a drug problem, but I just needed to calm my nerves.
That's all.
That's all.
Yeah, no big deal.
And I mean, she didn't really know how to do that.
Yes.
People weren't learning about emotional intelligence back then.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You calmed your nerves by drinking, popping pills, or whatever else was available.
Exactly.
And that's how you got through things.
Well, her sun was in very stressful alignment with her Neptune. And Neptune is the planet that rules the unconscious mind, which represents drugs and alcohol, because drugs and alcohol take you to that unconscious place. So having the sun in stressful alignment with Neptune is going to indicate a proclivity towards drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she definitely deep dived into that.
Yes.
So.
It's interesting because it's like a beauty mark also. Having the sun in relation to Neptune. Neptune softens the features. Her Neptune was in her first house, which represents the face that you put forward in the world. And she was a strikingly beautiful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Gorgeous.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's like this mark of beauty, but at the same time, it creates this need for drugs and alcohol. It's like a yin-yang gift challenge.
Goodness gracious.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
That's a lot. That's a lot to have to battle through that you came here with.
Totally. Totally. Yes.
Thank goodness we live in a time now where we have so much healing opportunities available to us, healthier alternatives, and it's our job to actually use them.
Yes.
So I asked her about some of the drugs that she was using, and she said pills were big, and that her first husband introduced it to her. But when it started getting out of hand, that's when he was around a lot less. And again, she's referring to Otto.
Otto, yes. Okay. Understood.
She does not even acknowledge the other two.
Well, would you acknowledge the guy that went golfing?
No, I would not.
When you were about to give birth?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to go out for a round of golf. What? No.
Yeah.
No.
But she said, he introduced her to the drugs because no one really knew how to calm a person down. They didn't know about deep breathing and like meditation. You know what I mean?
Totally.
So,
well, and her moon, which represents the emotions, was also in the 12th house, which is the unconscious. So when she got emotional, drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
That soothes the emotions.
Calming her down.
Calming
making sure
the
that she
nerves.
can do the job and she can get things done, or just be quiet.
Yes.
Probably at some point he just probably wanted her to
simmer
quiet,
down. Yes.
Simmer down. Yeah.
Well, and it was hard for her too because her ascendant, and I wanted to mention this earlier, but she came in with the red dress and the white polka dots. Very, you're going to notice that, right? Someone wearing that coming into the room, you're like, who's that? So her ascendant, which is the outer shell, face, body, personality, essence of the soul, this is what you show people that you don't know when you're around people that you're uncomfortable with or in places where you're unfamiliar or uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
You're showing your ascendant, and her ascendant was in Leo, which is the lion.
Yes.
So when she was around people she didn't know or in situations where she was uncomfortable or places where she was unfamiliar, she's showing the lion. Very confident, even though inside not feeling confident, outside showing confident. And if she's upset about something, she's not going to be quiet about it.
Yeah.
Going to be loud like the lion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm thinking that she's probably, if she were to take the physical and emotional sexual test today, I think she would probably test as a high physical.
High physical. And explain that again.
They don't respond very well to rejection. They tend to, I don't want to say the word needy, but when they fall in love or they become very fond of someone, they want to spend a lot of time with them. They want to be with them. They've made their mind up. And so if that person is not reciprocating, then they feel rejected and they're going to be very vocal about it. And they may even find ways to numb themselves because they feel so deeply in their bodies. So if I had to guess, she would
high physical,
rank high as a physical.
Oh yeah, that sounds right on point.
So she said she got hooked on it And that is kind of when they started separating,
Yep, sure.
simmering down a little bit on the passion. And she said eventually she just stopped hearing from him. And then she uses the term, then we divorced.
Right.
Again, in her mind.
It makes sense to me.
This was her man.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about the significant thing in her life, she said, leaving this planet. That was probably the best thing I ever did, was leave this planet. And she said, I finally felt lighter and freer than I ever have. I didn't care who I left behind. I was just happy to be out of my body and out of the density. So I get the feeling that Dorothy, when I use the term new soul, doesn't mean that she's never had an existence, but she was a young soul.
Yes.
So she didn't handle the denseness of this realm very well because, she hadn't been here that many times. Now, that doesn't mean that she wasn't in other places, because Earth is not the only realm that is in existence. But Earth is one of the densest realms.
This is where real changes happen.
Oh, yeah.
And before we go a little further, I just want to go back and say one more thing about Otto Preminger. So she did get pregnant by him.
Oh, did she?
Yes.
Okay.
She got pregnant by him, but the studio forced her to have an abortion.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. Yes.
Poor woman.
So, I mean, this is just another wound. No wonder she's just like, get me out of here.
Yeah, it's just too much.
Get me out of here. But Earth is the place where the eternal soul materializes into a physical body.
Yeah.
So she was feeling everything in the real of what was going on in her soul. That's what Earth is. And so there was a need to just like, can I just get out of this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, when we think about people who decide to end their time in the physical body and end their time on Earth, I think it's deeper than just, they're a coward or they, it's so much deeper than that. And we can't.
That's a cop-out.
That's, we can't just say that. We have to understand that each of us comes here with a different mission and also a different level of understanding. I've been here a lot of times. I've been here a lot of times.
You're not a new soul.
I'm not a new soul.
You're an old
I'm not a young
ancient
soul. I'm ancient. So I can navigate through things a little bit easier than a young soul or a new soul.
Totally. You've been here, done that.
Yeah. So with Dorothy, or people who have those heavy experiences in the physical body and they're like, I can't do this. We have to learn how to have compassion for these people, because that's not an easy choice to make.
No.
That's not an easy.
No.
It's going to free them up so that they can either decide to come back here and do it again or decide to do something else somewhere else. But that's not an easy decision to make.
Well, because the problems don't go away.
No, it doesn't go away.
You might think that it's going to go away, but she's still where she is.
Yeah. She's still healing.
Yes.
She's still healing.
And so, the trick is hanging on, because it's easier to heal here in body than it is outside of body.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Because you also have more help over here. You really do.
That's the whole point of being here. This is the place where your soul is meant to truly grow, and it can truly grow because it's living in the physical, experiencing the lessons of life for real. Doesn't mean that you can't experience or have relation to an experience outside of the body, but it doesn't click in the same way that it does in the body.
You're having a true God experience.
Yes.
You're experiencing both the density and also the spirit. You're able to experience the pain and the joy. And that is part of why this experience is so unique and why it's so amazing and why there are souls standing in line to get here, because they're like, I kind of want to do that. I want to have that experience.
Exactly.
It's kind of crazy. It's a wild ride, but it's really nothing like it. So when we're having hard times, it's important to remember what this really is all about.
Yeah.
And if we can dissociate a little bit and play the observer,
that's a key.
And see, oh, wow, I get to do this. And I know this is hard right now. This sucks balls right now, but I get to do this and I get to create a new world for myself.
That's the thing. You can create.
You can create the reality.
It will shift.
Yes.
So should we talk about the end?
We should talk about the end for Dorothy. Yes. So when I asked Dorothy, how did you die? She fully admitted, I killed myself. Flat out, I killed myself. I asked her how. She said an empty syringe. Okay. So I did look that up because the reported death was an overdose, right?
So there were 2 different reports to her death. Now, she died in her small apartment on Fountain Avenue in West Hollywood, California. She had spoken to her friend and former sister-in-law, Jerry Branton. She was scheduled to fly to New York the next day to prepare for her nightclub engagement at Basin Street East in New York. So she had basically struck out on all these movie roles. They didn't want to cast a woman of color in these roles. So she's like, you know what? I'll just go back to the clubs and I'll start performing and do my one-woman shows. But when she was speaking to her former sister-in-law, moments before she hung up, she said, whatever happens, I know you will understand. And several hours later, she was found unresponsive in her apartment by her manager, Earl Mills, and the Los Angeles Pathology Institute determined the cause of death was an accidental overdose. But the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office concluded that she died of a fat embolism resulting from a right foot fracture sustained 5 days previously.
Okay. So that's in alignment with what she told me.
Yes.
She said she used an empty syringe.
Yes.
So when I looked up what an empty syringe could do to someone, it can cause an embolism.
Yes, there you have it. Fat embolism.
Okay. And that comes from the use of an empty syringe. So again, I am not a medical doctor. I'm not a coroner. I'm just reading energy here.
Yes.
That's what she said that she used, that she did it that way. Back then, as a Black woman, if she was already using drugs and drinking, of course, it was probably
another overdose.
It's just another overdose.
Yeah,
it's just another starlet. Couldn't make it, couldn't hack it.
Yeah.
She admitted that that's what she did because it was just too much for her. She was ready to go.
It makes sense. It makes sense from an astrological perspective just because Jupiter, the planet of expansion, was at 28 degrees in Gemini. And that was connecting directly in a very stressful way to Dorothy's North Node, which is her soul's purpose at 28 degrees in Virgo. So that's a stressful connection. Her soul's purpose was in Virgo. That's about focusing on the details. That's about really just grinding the everyday life of waking up in the morning till you go to sleep at night. What are you doing? Being very specific, getting your routine in order, and just focusing on the mundane functions of daily life. Her South Node was in Pisces, which is fantasy world, drugs and alcohol. So she continued to play around in that Piscean realm with drugs and alcohol. And that was it. The planets were like, okay, fine, we'll give you your wish.
You're not using your time the way you need to be using it right now.
Exactly.
So, okay, we have several paths that we get to choose.
Yep.
She chose that one and it took her to the end.
Yes.
Or the end of that particular life, I should say.
Yes.
Because there really is no ending.
Yes. No, there is no ending.
Ending.
That's why the circle of spirit in the language of astrology is a circle. Because a circle has no beginning, no end.
And no end.
And neither does your soul.
That's right.
You come to Earth. This is the physical manifestation of your soul. And then when you're ready to leave the physical manifestation of your soul, you die.
Yeah.
And she was ready to leave. And so she died. And in Neptune, the planet of drugs and alcohol, was actually 1 degree away from her sun, her identity. So there's a couple indicators about this. about an overdose or, the embolism ending her life. Yes.
And who knows? Maybe she was trying to overdose and it wasn't working. And so she used the syringe.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say that she probably wasn't sober.
Right.
When she made this decision. She probably wasn't completely lucid. There was probably drugs or alcohol involved when she put an empty syringe in her arm, if that's what she did.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's all a part of the stew.
Whether she knew the empty syringe was going to do it or whether she thought there was something in the syringe and that would do it, who knows? So one thing I do want to finish with is that I asked her what are some of her last words and message to humanity. And she said, try to fix what's broken before it breaks you.
Wow. That's profound. Yes.
That's pretty profound.
I was like, it.
Can I use that?
Yes.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yes, I love that.
Try to fix what's broken before it breaks you. That's some wisdom right there.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for the wisdom, Dorothy. Thank you
for sharing your story, and thank you for allowing us to discuss it and help somebody else out there with the story,
Absolutely.
So it's still relevant today.
Absolutely. What a bright, shining light. What a talent. What an incredible human being. And nothing but love and respect for Dorothy Dandridge.
And she has a lot of light around her. It's a lot of light. Even though it seems dark and nervous, but she has a lot of light, which is part of the reason why this was such a hard place to be.
Yes. Earth. It's heavy here. It's not
love
light.
This
it's
place,
heavy.
Though.
Of course you do, because you're an earth creature.
I know I am. I'm an earth baby.
Yes,
I am.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Shara.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
It is always fun and a heck of a ride when we get together, right?
Yes, every time. I'm excited for the next one.
Me too. Oh, yeah. It's going to be good.
Yes.
Thank you again, Dorothy.
Thank you, Dorothy. You've been listening to The Uncharted Territories, where we see the unseen in the world of matter. If you would like to support the podcast, subscribe.
We've talked a lot about the subconscious mind and the importance of healing our wounds from the past. As an energy healer and a certified hypnotherapist, I help people understand how the mind works so they can harness the energy of the subconscious and tap into their inner power and make those positive long-term changes in their lives. If you're ready to make that change, you can book a session with me by connecting at opendoorhypnosis.com. I look forward to working with you.
If you'd like to learn more about who you are, where you come from, why you're here, and what you're meant to do with your life, contact me, Scott Tejerian, at theweeklytransit.com, and we will take a close, detailed look at your astrological code. My purpose is to help you understand who you are so you can accept, appreciate, and love the divine, unique miracle that is you.